It's now July 26th. Today the plan is to go from the Woodlands Inn and Suites in Fort Nelson, British Columbia, all the way up to Skagway. Problem is, as we noticed yesterday, 680 miles, bad roads, rough roads, was having some issues, and everybody kept telling me to go to this repair shop that I had gone and found the night before, called Dalex Auto Repairs. I got there before they even opened, and Todd, the owner, when he pulled in, was so nice. He immediately put me ahead of everybody in the shop already, put the car up on the lift. He was polite enough. I told him of the problem I'd had before. You see, 5 years earlier, the front brake calipers are held on by 2 bolts. And 5 years earlier, the bottom right one had vibrated loose and fallen out. And I said, it's kind of acting the same way. The car drives and steers fine, but I'm getting a lot of vibration noise. He put it up on the lift. Sure enough, this time we'd had another bolt come out, but this one wasn't the bottom right, it was the bottom left one. While we were at it, while it was on the lift, I found that the left rear chrome tailpipe extension had come out of its mount. So we went ahead and remounted that as well. And about 9:30 in the morning, I finally got rolling out of Fort Nelson, British Columbia. And I want to say again, Todd at Dalex Auto Repair, what a gem to help me out on that. When you leave Fort Nelson, you don't go north right away. You're pretty much heading west for quite some ways. So I'm heading north a little bit, but I'm really heading west. And part of the issue there is you're going to be getting into some pretty high mountains.
I remember this spot. 5 years ago, this is the mountain curve where there was it was gravel then, and there was a semi-tire right in the middle of the curve up here, and I either hit the semi-tire or I go off the cliff to the left into oh my God, what a gorgeous valley. Or I go in the mountain at the right. Somebody in front of me is leaking real bad. I don't know if they've blown an engine or a hose. It's not the RV. Or is it the RV? Somebody's leaking real bad.
And mountain passes, I hit 2 or 3 detours and pilot cars. We're up in the mountains. You're doing some river crossings on the North Tetsa River. And I stop anywhere I'd see anywhere, which is only about every 100 and 150 miles do you actually see anywhere you could stop. I stop at the Rocky Mountain Lodge to get some gas. I did stop several times, particularly at the Toad River, and finally get up to Muncho Lake. Now, if you've ever heard of Muncho Lake, it is this gorgeous, gorgeous lake that goes for miles and miles on the west side of the road. There is a lodge there, Northern Rockies Lodge. You keep going north, and eventually, after hours and hours and hours, great weather, great travel, animals like you've never seen, wildlife encounters with buffaloes and bears and moose. I noticed that the center caps on all 4 of the mag wheels have vibrated loose. That doesn't really affect anything, you just hear them. And I didn't have any more gas leaks the entire trip. Stopped for gas again at Coal River, where I'd stopped previously several years prior. As finally you cross into the Yukon Territory, out there in the middle of nowhere, but the road just kind of snakes up and down on the border between the Yukon and British Columbia, crossing the Liard River and a couple of other rivers up there. Big bridges, beautiful, beautiful territory. And finally, you cross permanently into the Yukon, somewhere south of Watson Lake and along the upper Liard River. As I'm pulling into Watson Lake, the road just south of there had washed out, and we have recorded I had to do an 8-kilometer dirt road detour going north. Boy, was that wild. Well, we didn't have any trouble. Thank God it wasn't raining up there, but did a dirt road detour and was able to get around. The road totally washed out. A beaver dam had collapsed about a month before, but as I come into Watson Lake, here's the goal. First, in the signpost forest, I wanted to go there because in 2015, I had nailed up one of my license plates. S-Bird 70 is the one I put up there in 2015. I got a picture of both plates with the car in the background. Great picture, but Just like the previous time, I was accosted by a couple of drunks. I quickly got out of that situation because it was going to get ugly real quick. From Watson Lake, you've got 300 miles of nothing. You're on the Alaska Highway. You are doing a couple of major river crossings. You go back and forth over the Liard River a couple of times. So you just keep driving. You drive through this and that, but you don't really get to anything in particular. Finally, I get to the town of Teslin. And at Teslin, again, you're coming down this huge mountain with a huge grade. And I'm going to guess you go about 100, 120, I think it's 140 miles. And finally, you cross the river one last time. When I get past Teslin Lake, there's a cutoff. I want to go to Skagway. And the cutoff knocks about 100 miles off the trip, but the problem is there's nothing out there. It's called the Tagish Cutoff. This is a oil and gravel compacted road. It's funny, it's about 150, 120 miles. I don't know exactly. And I saw in that entire 150 miles, and I went through two little villages. I saw 4 cars in 150 miles. 4. You go through Tagish, the first town you get to, and I never saw a car there, never saw a store, never saw anything. Highly disappointed. They said there was ice cream, and I couldn't even find the ice cream place. From there, you go on over, you get to Carcross, which is the next little place. It's a little village there. That's kind of, they get some tourists, and Carcross, it wasn't open, it was already late. Starting to get dark, it was after 9 o'clock. I still had 60 miles to go from Carcross to Skagway. By the way, in that 60 miles from Carcross to Skagway, not one car. And you are in the wilds of Yukon Territory and Alaska. So I cross at Carcross. I stop several times just to get pictures. The views are incredible. You're driving along lakes there in the high upper mountains. You're seeing snow. You get to the customs depot. I didn't know if I would have any customs issues. I had them there 5 years earlier. In fact, I'd been arrested there for calling the customs officer a moron. I had no issues this time. The young man was wonderful. In fact, asked if he could get pictures of the car, which he did. You leave Fraser, which is merely the customs stop, and you pretty much go downhill the whole way down into the city of Skagway. So I go down into Skagway, getting in on the Klondike Highway there. That's what you're driving on. About 10 o'clock at night. 13 and a half hours after I left Fort Nelson, I get into Skagway. Roughly 650 miles, almost all of it gravel. 3 detours, 1 road washout, a customs stop, and no towns of any significance. We'll pick this back up tomorrow, because I am beat when I get into Skagway, and I'm going to take a break.